Dude, today was a freaking day. Today was like run, dive, run, gym, cat crawl pull-ups, sled work, run, float tank, and then run home. So like I left at 10:30 and I didn't get home till 5. And it was, an hour plus in, I say dive, what's up now, but like hyperbaric oxygen, so they pressurize you to, it's like 8,000 feet lower than we are. It was like 1,300 and some feet below sea level, and we're at almost 7. And yeah, and then you breathe like almost pure oxygen. So you're like forcing oxygen into your plasma, into your bones, into like the smallest little capillaries. Yeah, and there's evidence that it like excretes, it produces and dumps out into your system stem cells at like 8-fold, I think was the number I saw thrown around. So that's pretty cool. So that's just for the dive, for the hyperbaric oxygen therapy. And then the gym work is one of the last sleds, one of the last cat crawls, one of the last everything. And instead of just doing this like grunt work like I've been doing, I'm going to start putting it all together and doing obstacle work. And so the tissue tolerance, as I'm calling it, is almost done, where it's just like lap after lap and rep after rep of just like putting in kind of almost by definition uninspired work of just, okay, I'm going to do 100 pull-ups. It doesn't matter how I do it or how many sets or reps or any of it. It's just a matter of getting through the reps to prep the body for later stuff. And it's been like that with sled work and all of it. So yeah, that gym it's getting to the point where it's been very uninspired lately because I've just been in the bell curve of it all. Like I'm still, there's still many sessions left, and I'm daunted by the amount of work, but the novelty's worn off, and it's been this horrible spot. But I've been getting it done anyway, and that's kind of the magic of looking at it mindfully and saying, hey, it's despair. I'm used to this. This is what I get when I'm racing. So kind of grappling with that despair, and then but then being on the tail end of it of like, oh my god, I have whatever it is, 5 or 1,000 more meters of sled work, and then I'm done for the whole block. It's like, all right, there we go. And and then going into the float tank, I've done the last 2 float tanks sober, and that's not the right choice for me in my life. I'm like running in there, and it's busy and it's tense and it's productive, it's good, but it's like worse than a meditation. It's like a meditation I can get to some point where like I feel like I can set it aside and set it aside and set it aside, whereas the sensory deprivation, I feel like I don't have like the defenses to set it aside. Whereas the tiniest little like shaving of sublingual ketamine, and I just can disappear like into how my breathing affects my psoas, and like I can feel my diaphragm stacked over my pelvic floor, and like I can really get in there on like 5 or 10 or 20 milligrams of ketamine. So today I did like, I don't know, 25 or 50 and put it sublingual when I left the gym. And so I had 2 miles of just salivating and holding the saliva in my mouth on there. And then the last little, like, it was a square cut in half. So it was this little like bullet shape by the time that I was done. Perfect shape. Got there, said hey to, got checked in at the place. I don't want to out them. We will at some point, affiliate-wise, because you should go there. It's an awesome place. And she does a great job, but I don't want to own to my local business owner that I'm taking ketamine and getting into a tank of water. But I do use the head floaty, so I'm totally safe, and I've titrated up. So, but yeah, got there, said hey, and took that last little bit, that little tiny little nub, and boofed it right at the keister. And then went in there. And that's the move, man. I've heard that's the move for doing like body work and stuff, that it actually interacts with your body differently if you boof it. And so it was like a halvesies. It was like I got the front end in and then got in there, and it's a great substance. I mean, a minimum effective dose, of course, but it's a very gentle. It's about as gentle as mushrooms almost, ketamine. And so and then ran home. So it's like that was a full freaking day. I mean, I was going however many hours that is.
The motivation that you need to really pursue an athletic pursuit like that and train and like, I mean, the race results is kind of like is your payoff, right? But like you're putting so much faith into the system and like the sessions, and like, it's not like you're getting a wage for clocking in and doing this kind of effort, Dude,
it's not at all. I had that realization at the gym today of like stacking all these things and being like, okay, the type of people that can afford this, they don't have lives. Like, they're busy. Like, they're inside, they're pale, they're out of shape, they're doughy and uninspired. And it's like, I'm out here, like, crushing it, full of life, juicy, just like, taking life on here. And so it was one of those things where I was like, this is a world-class day. Like, this is the kind of day that the people that could do this, that could afford to do this, aren't fit. And the people that are super fit, that are living in their cars at the trailhead, or like living in a converted van or something, it's like they're not getting a float tank and getting hyperbaric and getting all this stuff. So through leveraging who I am and playing like the social media game a little bit, and being able to really bring solid value to local businesses, and that's always been the top of my mind, is what am I bringing to this company?
Right.
So then when push comes to shove, I can say, hey, I need $750 for this race. I don't ask for anything more than I need, and I focus on bringing value. So I've never been in a position where it's odd to ask for more money or money to begin with.
Yeah.
And so it's been kind of a natural overflowing of that to suddenly have more and more and more resources.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really, really cool place to be, where you kind of come into yourself and realize, like, today is world class. But just the strain on my focus all day long to, like, okay, now we're gonna do this for an hour. Now we're running. Now we're doing this. Now we're doing this. And it's like, oh, check the time. Oh, now we're doing this for an hour. And it was a full flowy day of like one thing at a time, and I was loving it. I mean, I hit a PR for weighted pull-ups. Nice. So I've been doing these ascending sets of, like, I'll throw on the vest, 15 pounds, add 5 pounds, add 5 pounds, add 5 pounds for sets of 3 strict pull-ups. Mm-hmm. And the last one was, I did 30 pounds added on to me, and then did 32.5, and I probably could have squeezed out an extra few more pounds, but that felt like the limit of my pure, honest squeeze of everything. And,
Mm-hmm.
Leave it in the tank for next time. I can always get another PR later. Mm-hmm. But yeah, had 40-ish pull-ups with extra weight on me, some of which were, I think my PR was like 26.5 pounds on there. But yeah, it feels awesome to travel around the space that we're in on foot, from starting at home, finishing at home, on foot, to this business, to this person that that you have a lot of love for, that has a lot of love for you, that you're working this project so they can feed themselves and grow this business, and also you're passionate, you want to see that business grow because you believe in it. That's why you're willing to exchange your time and effort just to be able to use the facilities. Right. So that's a really, really beautiful place to be in, and it makes me fall in love with Durango. Like, I was coming down North College, and the views on there of the La Platas, and it's just like epic mountain views, layers on top of layers on top of layers, and I can see Animas and Hidden Valley where we live here, and just feeling so connected in 4 or 5 or 6 dimensions that we could really define, like through my chest, just like connected with all this stuff. Yeah. And it was such a beautiful day. But yeah, man, I mean, you're getting back from Santa Fe, so like you're reintegrating into home as we can try to define it, I guess.
Yeah, and then like, doing our Chimayo pilgrimage a while back now, and doing it even 2 times, right? Mm-hmm. And it, like, having that experience of
because that's the same direction. Yeah, that's the same. Chimayo is almost to Santa Fe. There were Santa Fe addresses that we stayed at. Yeah, so.
Right. It's basically right in there. And, doing that trip in a car and being able to do it in a day, like in 4 hours, it's a lot of driving. You're processing so many different landscapes. You're just like beaming into the unknown. And there's like a few cities, obviously, like the checkpoints, like Pagosa Springs, and then you have Dulce, and then you have Chama, and then so it's like a little bit of civilization. But in between those spots, it's like just you, nature, God, and your car and your wheels spinning and like moving you through time and space. But like knowing that, there's so much vastness. You pass this one place called Ghost Ranch, right? And it's like, it makes you think about just like being like a ghost in the land almost, right? Like there's just so much space. It's so vast. And like, something that was coming up for me was like just these different emotions, right, as I'm driving and going through this space. And I was like, man, what is that sense of, awe, obviously, of the mountains and the grandeur, but also this sense of there is a little fear. Like, what happens if you get caught out here in the cold and it's snowing and it's flurries and it's like, like it's you versus nature, right, in that context. And like being in the comfort of a car, obviously you're cozy and it's cush, but then thinking about the reality of being out there. Now, every 10 minutes someone's going to drive by, so if something were to happen, car were to break down, that was my concern, right? I was like, well, if my car breaks down, or like the transmission
you
goes
can
out.
appreciate the vastness.
Yeah, right.
There's nothing. Like
There's
going
nothing.
through Abiquiu.
N-O-T-H-I.
Until you get to Espanola, there is nothing.
Nothing. You have whatever you brought with you in your car, and it's like it puts a whole new like, I don't know, perspective on survival too. We get comfortable when we're in civilization. We get comfortable when we see familiar things. Even just coming back, I just like felt so comfortable. I was like, oh, all my stuff, right? Like all the things that I know and love, and you have this sense of understanding, right? That gives you peace. Like helps to establish some peace. But yeah, when you're out there and there's nothing like that, there's no like marker or like.
You think that peace is real? When you're here?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Like, can you lean on that, or is that a facade? Is that familiar street signs, but they're still just street signs?
Right.
Or is there a level of...
Maybe if there's memory associated with it, it connects us a little bit more, so it makes us feel more stable and grounded. Like, oh, I remember going to that place to get lunch.
But the question remains, is that real safety, or is that just because you... What if I implanted memories of Abiquiu being a good time? Abiquiu was a good time for us last
it was
time,
a great time.
actually. So yeah, it's easy
and
to do.
I was going to say that too. So when I'm driving through places I have memory, it's all of a sudden like my nervous system calms down, my nerves. But then when I'm like driving and it's like zzz, like going through these more unknown territories where I'm like I don't have a landmark for things, then it's like your heart plays tricks on you. Like these emotions come up and it's like what if you're just out here and how long do you got in the cold freezing temperatures or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that
elevation.
That piece, I think, is something we can lean into.
Yeah.
I think that piece is home. And
Yeah.
I think I was, because my mother's side of the family, my father's side of the family are both super military. When my dad got a corporate job that said you're going to move every 3 years, they're like, that's normal, that's what people do. So
Right.
I didn't have the military brat perks, but I had the military brat schedule of like, you're always the new kid. I mean, my longest lasting friends to this day, I wonder if I'm not like stifled, like if I missed some critical period about like you've had someone in your life for 3 years and you're like, cool, this was a good relationship, we move on now, because it's just like implicit in whatever I grew up with. But yeah, it's like still to this day I mean I don't really have any long lasting friends. I've reached out to a few people that I knew from way back when that I've stayed in touch with, just out of respect for the fact that they've known me across so much time, and with social media we can all stay so connected. But since I've never had like a center of my family, or I've never had a center of I've never had a city that really meant anything to me other than the ones that like I'm living and training out of, that then you kind of become, which we can get into. But this idea of home is really interesting to me because of all that. Because I never, most people think of home and it's like, well, where were you born? And I know most people think that because when they ask me, where are you from? And I say, well, I don't remember living there, but I was born in St. Louis. They go, oh, you're from St. Louis. It's like, well, I went to high school in Chicago. Like, those were formative years. But my friends in Chicago would never say, oh, yeah, you're from Chicago. Like, I've kind of never had a place that really felt like home. And so that's been kind of an ultimate liberation in my adult life, especially as a endurance outdoor athlete, in the sense that your home defines what you're good at. So it's like as an athlete, if you live in the mountains, you're going to be better at running in the mountains than people that don't live in the mountains. So then you might want to make sure that you live somewhere that has the topography that's the kind of races that you want to be good at. And so this whole idea of defining home, I think that peace angle, there's something to it, and that makes me think of like territory. I know, Barefoot Ted used to always, that's a mentor of mine of Born to Run fame. He's like my uncle. And he's always been big on territory, and he said it to me so many times before I really had any appreciation of what it could have meant. And now I'm not even sure if it's my idea that I've superimposed onto just his phrasing, but this idea of territory is really, it holds weight to me, of what you can mentally map is your territory. What you can like really
it's a lot.
Intimately map, like
it's a lot nowadays too.
Not with gray areas, not with like not with these little pockets of like, oh well, I know from 122nd Street to the pizza joint on whatever, and it's like that's my little lane. It's like that's good, that's territory. But until you can connect these separate little pockets of territory, it doesn't count until they're all. It has to be your biggest territory that's contiguous.
Yeah, and it's like you encounter territory through perception, right? And then you get perspective on it. And I think there's something about being in a mountain town where you can go up and look at the city from up top. And so when you're living out of your senses, you just have your perception. A lot of people are kind of on flat land or rolling hills or whatever. They don't get a perspective. And so I think just to add to that, like when you live in a mountain town and you're able to go up and look, you gain such a valuable perspective of the space, right? It's not like you're just living your life face to face, just seeing everything at eye value. You know,
I mean, that's a lot of people.
Yeah,
I really do think a lot of those people, and like bless your hearts, like if you take the time to comment or send me a DM, like I will try to get back to you.
Yeah.
But most of you people are like that. Like it's amazing. If you're one of those people that sees a mountain and says, "Man, I wonder what it would be like, and how much effort it would take for me to get up there and turn around and look back at this spot from up there." If you're one of those, you're my people. And if you're not one of those, then I really I don't have room in my decade for you right now. Like maybe we can be friends when we're 70 or something, but like I really, in the foreseen future, I just I can't seem to allocate emotional energy towards people that don't understand that. That seems like that's your birthright to be able to do that. And you're in a town, and a lot of people really will look around and say, "Oh, well, these mountains are pretty. Like, I don't need to go sweat or anything. Like, there's animals out there, or I might get lost, or mountain lions or whatever." Whereas I'm in this idea of like, if I'm in town and I know 4 different routes up the Hog's Back Mountain, just whatever, west of town in Durango here. Beautiful, like wavy, shale pile. It's amazing. It doesn't just wash away with a single rain. And this time of the year, it's covered in snow on all the north-facing stuff. So I always like to say it's ribbed for your viewing pleasure. It's like got these little like snow ribs of these. It's a beautiful mountain, and immediately behind it, indiscernible from the mountain, from the angle that you have from town, is Perrins, which is this big 90-degree tooth rising up 100 feet out of the ground, more than 8,000 feet, and jutting up behind it, this odd just tooth of a I mean, such a geometric shape to clash with the surrounding topography around there. That's like shale, like one step up from a pile of sand, for stability's sake, and to be able to look at that and know the rise and the run and the distance and the terrain, and where living down here in the Four Corners area, every single pocket might be a different ecological niche. If I'm not bastardizing these words, but it's like you could go through and have yucca, and then you could get over to the next valley over and there's no yucca and there's ponderosa, and then you get to the next valley over and it's rocky and covered in lichen, and the next one has shale and the next one has sand, and so there's so much variety packed in here. And being able to put all that into my head and feel like I can put that into 3 dimensions and spin it around and look at all these different routes in my head up one mountain, and then turn 30 degrees and see Smelter Mountain and say, Smelter. That's the reason there's a town here, because there was a smelter at the base of it. There's a dog park at it now because the ground was so bombed out from the train, which carries people now. It used to carry ore. It was easier to supply people and fires down here than it was up in Silverton, so they would train it down here. And now here we are. We have a tourist industry. We have a dog park. We have a mountain named Smelter. And it's like to connect to that human history, even just the last 200 years, and then to connect that to routes that go up it. And so the mountain has significance. It has a life. It has an energetic field to it. And then to slowly map all that in your head. And then, you throw something epic, like one shot, straight shot, here to Leadville, Colorado Trail, boom, or here to Chimayo, boom, and to, in my head, be able to think, well, this hill, and this drainage, and this mountain, and this range, and this aspen grove, and to be able to categorize all that in my head, I am thoroughly losing my mind at this point. Like, I really do feel like my brain, more than just 3 years ago, I can tell my episodic memory and my bandwidth for a lot of things that people care about is 10% what it was 5 years ago. I mean, I can feel it, and it's kind of concerning. I'm like, did I get rat lungworm in my brain or something when I was in Hawaii? Like, am I losing parts of my brain? But my ability to map 3 dimensions of topography and passes and all this stuff.
I mean, it would be amazing to see if you became a painter and painted some of these things that you can see, because a lot of people don't leave 30 miles within their radius, like if they were born there and they didn't have cars or they didn't have planes. So traditionally, humanity's stayed in their pocket that they've been in. But to be someone like you, not only have you like flown to different places and drove, different places, but you on foot brought yourself through these different terrains, different context. Like you're doing like a downhill and you're already 10 miles in, so you know what that feels like, right? There's like all these different things to connect about this space, and then like making that mental map, right? And it is so vast because you got stuff like what in Seattle and the Midwest, and I have stuff in the Midwest and California and Morocco, and to really like hold on to those sacred like memories too, and like be able to put things where they belong. I went to college in Winona State in Minnesota, and Winona is very similar to Durango because there's bluffs surrounding it. It's like a miniature Durango is what I call it. But I think that perhaps that when I was coming to Durango to do some work, that's what connected me to this land. Was it reminded me of a place that I thought was home. Right?
Also, it had some of that familiarity.
Yeah.
So it didn't have the crazy.
So I think it held me in some sense, right? Where, I could have just been like, cool, did my video project, I'm done. I also fell in love too. That's another story. But like, so there's a little bit of that, and then, but I think it was the container of Durango itself. Like the energy that it holds, where it's kind of like this cradle, like where the mountains are surrounding you, right? And kind of like just giving you this sense of place and presence and home. And Winona was very similar. The Mississippi River was cutting right through it. The glaciers came in and carved these little bluffs in this beautiful valley. And you have like bald eagles hunting in there and everything. But like to go through my education in that small town, and then to be out here on this like wild road trip that turned into like the adventure of a lifetime, and like now to be building my home and that my sense of home here, and my sense of community and my sense of relatability, and it's really profound. And then just to add that endurance running thing into it too, like being able to know like from point to point like what the run feels like. So before you even do it, you're like, okay, I got like 500 feet of gain, and then I'm gonna go down for 1,000 feet or whatever, and you start to create like, okay, I know what it feels like to walk on this land or to go at this pace, right? And I find that so fascinating.
I mean, that can be a problem too.
Yeah.
Like I raced that snowshoe race in Chama, and the second I was thinking about it in my head, it's like a J shape or like a limit curve or something of lap one stretched out before me, like lap one stretched, just accordioned out in front of me.
Oh yeah.
And lap two, the landmarks were touching each other, like it was they were all it smoothed into one point.
Yeah.
On lap two of just like, that's a conversation with God in my book. That really is like where you're pushing so hard, and it's no longer like, well, no one could make up that gap anymore. It's like there's no one that's even trying anymore.
Yeah.
Like this is a world-class performance, and as the conditions got worse, the competition totally fell away. And this so it can be concerning if you're too defined. It can be a problem if you're convinced it's going to hit you a certain way or not a certain way, because you cannot be braced for something that might hit you real hard on one day, and that can be as big of a problem as bracing for something that suddenly you've gained fitness. Like you're a dynamic critter, and every day is a little different, and the weather's a little different. And that balance of knowledge and receptivity, because you don't want to pigeonhole in, of all places, your home, just this place that you're in love with.
Pigeonhole it. That's an interesting concept.
You don't want to typecast.
Yeah,
you don't want to typecast your home,
right,
or your local route. You want to receive what the route's going to give you every single day.
Right.
And I think there's a wisdom that happens that's kind of some sort of bell curve there. I forget what they call that, Kugler or whatever model of like, if you know a little bit about something, you think you're an expert, and if you know a whole lot about something, you're aware that you don't know most things.
Yeah.
And so there's this horrible like curve roller coaster of idiocy. And I think there's something to that with routes too. If you do a route 3 or 4 times, you're thinking about, especially if you're not in great shape, you're thinking about, how do I get through this? How do I get to this section? If I can make it here, then I can make it here. And you're like really trying to break it down. And over the years, I've learned that if I do that too many times, starting and finishing in one spot, then I ruin one section of road for myself because I know
Yeah.
exactly where all the quarter-mile markers are, or I know exactly where all the stuff is. I beat it to death, and then I just can't even I can't engage with that anymore because I've made one solid track of what I think about this route, and we are stuck on this track and just can't break out into something new. And doing that on purpose when I go to a new place, or even moving in here almost a decade ago, I've intentionally not taken note of where all the mile markers are. And most runners, that's such a basic runner thing, isn't it? Like, what's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 miles away from your house in any direction? It's like, I've intentionally not locked in as much as I possibly can. Some of it happens passively, especially after a decade, but it's not really of any consequence. So I've just intentionally, just like you would intentionally say, oh, this is 1 mile from home, I've intentionally been like, don't look at it. It's funny. It is what it is. It'll happen. And so that idea of you want to be receptive to changing of the seasons. And I think hopefully if you're wise and receptive enough, you might get locked in after 10 times or 20 times or 30 times of doing a route. By the time you've done it, by the time you've done it 100 times or 200 times, like the nose loop, it's like I've done that every single day for entire training blocks, or twice a day sometimes.
Wow.
And you no longer, it takes so much mental energy. That's what it is. It takes so much mental energy to keep the construct of, and then this happens, and then this happens, to keep the story coming, that if you just keep going and going and going, you will eventually wear yourself out, and your aerobic engine will keep you running, but your story of the thing, at least in my experience and people that have come through, your story of the thing will slowly become such a burden to hold on to, and such a pain in the ass system that just takes up so much of your drive, of your RAM.
Do you think by having like the same route that you just like constantly do, you could say maybe that helps you feel at home with your route? Or do you think is it better to change it up and like switch the places you're going so that story doesn't like bug you out?
I hate the scientific answer of it depends.
Yeah, right.
But it depends.
5 miles is 5 miles.
It depends on the person.
Yeah.
I think if you're that person who's going to be like, oh yeah, this rock is a quarter mile, and my heart rate's usually like 155 from here, and you're like, you just have that sort of scanning for data, ASPE sort of like thing that most runners do, that engineering pencil pusher type. Like, they have that. That's why they're attracted to running with the numbers and the paces and all this stuff. So if that's definitely you and that's your default, then you have to slowly put that version of yourself in the Animus River and hold it under until the bubbles stop. But like, you certainly don't want to lean into that. So it's like you might have to change this up, or change the settings on your watch. I mean, throw it on there. Put real time power. Or real-time respiratory rate, or something that is like removed. Not even cadence, maybe cadence, but like certainly not pace or distance or any of that shit. Like none of my watches have time of day or total time or like anything like that. None of those things matter while I'm doing this. It's like that's a problem for past Anthony and future Anthony. Present Anthony has these concerns, and so this is what's displayed on here.
Yeah.
And I really like minimizing the metrics.
That's like transcending the fourth dimension of time, right? Because you can get kind of like caught up in like, oh, how much time is this going to take me, And when you're talking about past Anthony, future Anthony, present Anthony, well, present Anthony or present Amir or present viewer can, from that place, access all the dimensions. But if you're in the past, then you're like in the fourth dimension, like you're stuck in the dimension of time. Or if you're in the future, then you're stuck, so it's like, I've been playing with this concept of like right now is the present moment, and then like right now is also the present moment.
Nice.
So it's like you're having to retrain yourself to keep coming back to the present, because you can get lost and then you realize like, oh, what did I just do with that present moment, right? It's like, because it's there and then it's gone, it's there and it's gone. And so there's this concept of like being present, and then from that present place, then that's where all the life and that's where all the juice is happening. Like that's where it gets good.
And the things that can't exist there are interesting.
Yeah.
Like, effort doesn't really exist in the present moment. Like, effort as a two-dimensional thing, like effort as a I'm at an 8 out of 10 exists. But that 8 out of 10 is so dynamic. Like, if I suddenly felt like I was at an 8 out of 10 for a run right now, sitting here out of context, we'd be going to the hospital.
Yeah.
Like out of
right.
without a previous thing and a post thing, and I'm doing this, and here's my feedback and all this stuff.
Yeah.
That taken out of context would be terrifying.
Yeah.
And so you do have to use the past and the future as a tool
Mm-hmm.
to kind of calibrate what that present moment means. But
Yeah.
like this race in Chama, being the most recent juicy thing to talk about, highlight reel thing, I don't know that I could have gone. I certainly couldn't have talked myself into going easier. And I don't know that I don't think I have the capacity to have gone any harder. I mean, I like stubbed my snowshoe once or twice. Like I was exhausted. Like my system was tapping out, and I was just pushing down into it and loving it.
Yeah.
And so there was no resistance. There was no force of resistance. There was no force of the future. There was no worried about anything. I mean, there was no room for any of that, and it was just drive, like a sled dog getting high on his own supply. It was just pushing in harder and harder. It feels so good. And just like diving into it. But at the same time, I say all that. Hey, Winston. I say all that about I couldn't have gone harder. But get out of here, bud. But I also am positive I could have done another lap. And so where does that come from?
Yeah.
Where does that extra lap come from?
Right.
If you can't exhaust yourself to collapse at the finish line, that's kind of what I think a lot of us think we're looking for, is that perfect, honest effort that leaves you're positive you're going to die halfway through, you find a way, you make it to the finish line, and then you collapse. But the problem is we're so dynamic. You 90% of the way done are positive you're going to die, and you are giving what I would appraise as 100% effort on the day, given everything that you have. But the second you cross the finish line, and it was a great experience, and you are dancing with the muse, your testosterone might be double or triple, and like suddenly effort feels so good, and then like past you is this weird construct that doesn't exist anymore because now you're present you again,
and it's upgraded, or something's changed, right? Yeah, it's like after that,
every time you transcend, right? It becomes a new standard.
Wow.
And so there really is.
Wow.
There's such an odd dynamism with you as you're playing out over these things, and I think having a similar route and having a home and a quiver of these routes is what makes all of this able to be objective, because you can measure yourself against your past self, and you can let go of the I have to beat this, I have to do this, I have to beat this person, I have to put this certain output, and instead you can think more in terms of, well, when I was in shape to do this 7-mile route in this time, I could go down to sea level and do this, or I could go to this event and I did this. And so you can take these things, and they slowly, as you get these bits of data that are just kind of inert bits of data, you're doing the same thing we were saying about you're calibrating the present moment based on that past moment. So you're looking at past performances and you're saying, I had X, Y, and Z workouts on A, B, and C routes, and I did this performance out here. And so if I can do all of those 10% better, or even better world, the same, but 10% easier, then I can go and expect to do whatever performance it is that I'm aiming at. So you can really calibrate all these things, and that's, as someone who's been homeless spiritually, like, territoryless. That's the territory.
And this is interesting too, because I feel like you can buy a house and you can still kind of be homeless, right? So just getting back to this idea of home, because home is where the heart is. To say a cliche, but to maybe feel like what is it like to embody that? Like, if home is where the heart is, then it's within you. And humanity has been searching for home for so long. I feel like since we were banished out of the garden, right? There's 3 main traumas that we face in life: is divorce, which is the loss of love; death, which is the loss of life; and then the third one is, if it's going to come to me, maybe it will in this moment, maybe it won't: death, divorce, and displacement, right? There's 3 Ds to it, right? So these are the major traumas that we face as a species, right? So a lot of people are questing to like buy the home and get the yard and the dog and everything, right? And then there's other people that, they'll do anything, to keep a relationship, or, to avoid death. What they do is they pursue glory. They you try to create a legacy, right? That would be the hope and the intent.
And religious faith. And
to persevere through life, through all the dynamic challenges that you face, right? It's like, we see a lot of the beautiful things on Instagram Reels and all this stuff that's cool and glitzy and cool, but you don't see people talking too much about slaying their demons or like, you know, getting attacked by shit that's been like haunting them or whatever, and then like overcoming that. Like, but that's, you know, that's part of
well,
life.
now we've
like
fetishized that. Now we've like put that up on a pedestal.
Now that's the thing, because it's
first
like,
been so gritty.
we've seen all
like,
the glory stuff. Now show us all the, you know, I can totally see that.
I always hated that thing of like the, you know, the master doesn't speak or whatever the whole shindig is. And like I just, what's the point of learning all this if you can't share it? So if the master really doesn't speak, then what the hell? But the older and crustier I get, I'm like, I'm just gonna let these kids be wrong. Like they're not gonna. I understand why people have to believe in multiple lives, because that person is a they are a wasted cause in this life. So I have to either give up on them or believe that they're gonna come back as a mosquito and figure their shit out.
Figure it out as
like,
a mosquito.
They're fucked.
I think that's what happens when you abandon your incarnation, when you abandon your soul. Then it's like, well, maybe in the next life I can get it right. It's like, no, you got to take accountability for this life, this one life that you have, because this is it. You know, you're it. Like, this is the universe manifesting itself. This is the, you know, evolution of billions and millions of, you know, cosmic forces to be in alignment for even your birth, the miracle of your birth to even happen. So I think you got to take a little bit of ownership of that and accountability. Yeah, it's challenging. Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, you know, it's set up against you versus the system, you versus the world, you versus nature, all this stuff. But it's like, you know, take some ownership. Do what you can to master the elements. You know, figure out how this helmet works. You know, figure out how to navigate through time and space, and like, you know, and love it and love the process. You know, because like this is a sacred experience to have a life, right? And you know, it's just this, you know, tapping into the presence and getting into the present moment, and then like from that place, then you can like course correct. It's that whole thing of 2 degrees, right?
Until you buy a house,
and
then you owe them, and you can't course correct for shit because you owe student loans and a house, and even if you don't have a kid, you're fucked.
Yeah,
you're so inert. You are in place.
Yeah,
and you might have bought this house in Indiana or something. Like you don't know where you're. Like you could be somewhere horrible. Totally, now you're working for freaking Microsoft or something. Like you got a great job. You're working for Enterprise, and they let you be your own boss, and you got an awesome benefits package. You're done. That's it.
That's also the concern too, because there's so much compromise that happens, and to live a life of spirit where you're living through your breath and living through your unique energy, like to actually own that and live that out. It's like, oh no, you can't do that. You can't speak, you know, at this hour because this is where the manager speaks. Like you're not allowed to. So like they silence so many souls in this process of like people work. This sounds so
where are you going?
No, it sounds like just like unemployment talk, but the concept of like working for somebody or getting stuck into the paradigm of that, and then like not being able to self-actualize and let the highest expression of your soul happen through that natural flow. Like that's what hell is. That's what, you know, that's what not making it in this incarnation looks like, is you not being able to really
you're separated from yourself.
Yeah. You become this archetype. You become like a Mr. Smith, you know. Yeah. You know, Mr. Anderson or whatever in the Matrix, where you're just an agent, you're a cog in that wheel. And yeah, sure, maybe it's a good, you know, we need this for civilization to move forward, right?
I mean, there's stakes in the Matrix, man. Do you want to eat goo outside of the Matrix, or do you want to eat steaks in the Matrix?
Exactly.
Dude, I'm going to eat this goo outside of the Matrix until it fails to sustain my earthly vessel on the level that I want. Right. I mean, I think we're to connect a few disparate things here. Yeah. You buy this house, you buy this box, and you like fence it off and wall it off, and it's always such a bizarre thing. Like I was out in LA, and there's a dude. There's no way he's gonna listen to this anyway. There's a dude that was like, "Hey, we got to get you in for a podcast. This will be great." Like it would further his brand and what he's doing. And now that I've seen a few events that he's sponsored with his company, like, yeah, this would be. Like, I'm on brand for him. Like, I am a good gateway. And I would bring people that would never entertain his offer. If they saw that I was on there, I would be a gateway for him to them. Like, I would connect him with the people he's looking for. Yeah. So it'd be a good move. And I'm like, yo, man, I'm not going to come from... I was, like, way north out of the city. I'm not going to come from Hollywood, basically, all the way down, like, south of the city to shoot this podcast, and then be done with this podcast at like 5 p.m. and have to get back to where I am and have $100 Uber to do. Right. I was like, so I'm just gonna crash with you tonight, And like I didn't even make it weird. I was like, you just gotta find space for me. It'll be great. Like we'll get up. We could do workout tomorrow. Like I'm not racing right now. I'm post race, so I can be fun. And oh no, man, like I don't have space. Like me and the girl are in a studio or whatever. And it's like, oh, you're poor.
Yeah.
Like you're so poor that I don't want to deal with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're so poor that it's a vacuum to me and my freedom to be around you.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're. A lot of people, we think we're good people, but, like, we're not bringing homeless people home every night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Somewhere between bringing a random homeless person home, which has happened in this house before, like, somewhere between that and making space for someone that you know fairly well as a professional contact at this point, that is just out traveling, and somewhere between there is people's lines. Because most people will make it weird if they don't have, like, they think they would offer you something if they had like a ball-in guest house. Yeah. Oh man, like I can't do that. Like all we have is this space that we use for storage. It's enough. And I'm like, so I'm gonna spend a bunch of money to be on your show that's like a startup company show. Yeah. Like what the fuck, dude? Like, and that's a type of wealth that I think I'm striving so hard to have, like land and space and all these things because I want to open it up for people. The value in having that. I don't actually understand anymore if it's because I've realized that no one wants to offer it to people. Even the person who has the imagination of I'm going to have this big house so that I could have these family reunions. You were duped. You were never going to have those family reunions. You weren't going to have those family reunions. If you were invited to one of those, you wouldn't go. Mm-hmm. So when you bought this that you were duped. You were sold. You were buying an experience, not the house. Yeah. But you can't sell the experience. You can only sell the house. So you bought this house, and now that's your home. But it's a cage. It's like walled off from the rest of the world, and it's not bringing you happiness, and it's certainly not bringing you community.
It's not bringing you new ideas. It's not bringing you new possibilities, new opportunities. I think the whole vision of the Ultra House of like having kind of like a hub in major cities where people can crash and like then explore and experience the land and all these things. That opens up so much value for people, so that like when you land in a city, especially in this world that's getting more and more globally connected, to have hubs where people can go for a sustainable price and then they can kind of get like a tour from the people who live there.
Yeah, share their territory. Exactly what we're talking about. Connect it back down here. Exactly. You're sharing that territory. Yep. You're coming in here, you say, hey, where's this? And I'm like, yo, dude. Let me tell you, in intricate detail where you're going from here.
Exactly, yeah. It's like, when I drove you through Taos, right, and I was showing you the places that I got all excited because I lived there for a little bit, it's like you kind of give people some context and you give people some history to it, and then that brings it, into a cool place. And then also they bring their unique experiences, so then you learn. So by bringing like foreigners or people from like New York or the East Coast in, then not only do you learn from them because they have their own unique knowledge base, but then you teach them as well. So it's like this really cohesive thing where you're not getting stuck in the same reality tunnel, just in your house, never having guests over. You're not seeing and getting exposed to new ideas, right? Like I feel like that's what the value of it is.
And it's so much more than being a tourist in your own town. Although that's a good way to summarize it. Yeah. It's dependence arising. Mm-hmm. It's this idea in Buddhism that things don't exist in and of themselves. Yeah. Something is black to the extent that everything else in the world is not black. If everything else in the world became slightly more black, that thing would lose some of its blackness. Mm-hmm. I was reading a book, How to See Yourself as You Truly Are by the Dalai Lama, and I actually understood this, like dependence arising for the first time in my life. I was looking at this little purple flower. It's like the only reason I can even register this as a flower, as purple, as any, and it's like I saw all these things at once, boom, and just exploded myself all over this mountainside. It's only purple because everything else is not. It's not. Yeah. When you bring someone from the outside, you can then share their outsider looking in view, and you can be reminded. But it's not even reminded that devalues what the actual experience is. It is real again. It is like reincarnated of that same experience is validated by remembering that the rest of the world isn't like that. You know, you're in Santa Fe and it's busy, and you come home and suddenly your eyes are turned back on. They're recalibrated to how not busy this town is. Like, I can run down the middle of the highway now that it's not tourist season and, like, slowly teeter off. I don't have to pause my music or anything, like, or audiobook. It's like I can just cruise right on in there. And so this, there's something deep to that.
There's a piece here, and, you know, hope I'm not, like, you know, just coming to the land and extracting, oh, finally I found a place where there's not cars buzzing by my house every 10 seconds, right?
Dude.
But it's like, to find a place like that where the peace of nature is, like, so surrounding you, you know, and, like, you can't buy that. That's not something you can purchase with money, you know? So, like, that's one of the, I think, the highlights of being in a position like this, minus some, you know, neighbors, dogs barking and stuff. That's just part of it. But
it's life.
Yeah, it's life. Yeah, but, you know, when you go outside and there's just a constant stream of traffic just right in front of your eyes.
It's impersonal.
It's just and everyone's doing it, and you don't know who they are or what they're doing, and so there's just all this thought and tension and energy, and it's just this exchange. Some people are doing business, some people are doing family things, whatever, and it's just so much. But what's really happening is, like, America's just like this, you know. Like, that's
just locked in.
You're locked in a cage, and you're just like, I hope this is bringing me to my final destination, whatever that is. And it's like, sometimes I just, like, I go into this trance of, like, just seeing America, and everyone's just like this, and just lines and lines of cars, and it's just like, who runs anymore? Who walks anymore? It's almost like you see someone walking on the side of the road, and you think they're crazy or something. You know, it's like, to a certain extent, it's like, but that's who we are. We are bodies that walk and, like, endure and have stamina and have capacity for things that, like, are so magnificent, and yet we just, like, we yield. And, like, I feel like at some point you break too, and you're like, I need the car, I gotta drive it, because, like, when things are so spread out and things are so in these different realms, I don't know, but to be in a place where everyone's doing that and it's just millions and thousands of people, it's overwhelming. You know, it really is.
Yeah, and everyone has their own little box.
Yeah.
Their own little car.
Yep.
That's like the extension of inviting someone into your house.
It's like
and sharing your territory with them. That's what it is. It's not sharing space. It's not saving them a hotel. It's not saving them a run around. It's not treating them like family. It's not being humane. It's sharing your hard-earned territory with someone of value.
Yeah. And it's even rare, I feel like, the more you go through life, that people are even accompanying you in your car anymore, because everyone has their own car.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, right? So it's
like... cars are the same fucking thing.
Yeah, and it's like, so everyone has their own, and it almost becomes its own home. And I would even say that I think my car is more of a sense of home than any building that I've ever been in. Because the car itself can bring you to so many different locations. It's almost like a teleportation device.
It's freedom, man. A car is freedom.
Yeah,
serious
right.
freedom.
But then, you know, discipline is real freedom, right? So if you're not disciplined, it can be taken away from you, right? Like, if you're not remaining disciplined. So there's this contrast of, well,
or if you're just a lucky fuck.
Yeah, or if you're lucky, you can just go to the West Coast and drive to the East Coast, road trip everywhere you want. And people do that. And that's chill, whatever they want to do. But I think ultimately you do have to create an internal discipline, because although we can sit there and drive a car all day long, you also have to train the body and train pulse and train your resting heart rate and things, right? Because that was something that I was encountering on some of these longer trips, is like, dude, I think my pulse is like, it's just too high. I'm dry. I shouldn't be this high, you know? And so, like, to really have that control over the central nervous system and, like, to have a sense of calm is really important. So I'm like, we should create a fitness plan for anyone who owns a car, so that they can, you know, maintain, like, a good resting heart rate, right? You know what I'm saying? And that was, like, one of my ideas. Was like, because you probably need some kind of program. Like,
I mean, I think the ultimate program
yeah,
is applicable to anything, and this is me on the supreme place of privilege with the life that I've created for myself.
Yeah.
From nothing, though, so this is not, you know, it's not an offensive place of privilege. Is to just simply never be in a hurry.
That's huge.
When you catch yourself being in a hurry, that's your mindful cue to calm the fuck down and stop being in a hurry.
Yeah.
That is more wealth than health is, I think.
Wow.
Never being in a hurry feels the subjective experience of never being in a hurry is as good as being able to pounce from this couch up onto this table and sprint out the front door. Like, it's as subjectively empowering and relaxed and alert. It's directional. Like it's not all over the place. It's not chaotic.
Yeah, I think there's so much power to that, and it's funny coming from an ultra runner about like never being.
I'm never in a rush, man.
Yeah,
on a race.
Yeah, that's profound because that's like one of the spiritual hiccups that you get because you're in a rush and you're moving, and then you think about going 60 miles an hour down the highway. Like how many people are in a rush? Like you got to be in a rush when you're going at that pace because there's no way your body's going to move that fast if you're trying to walk there or run there. So you create these like things. I got to get in the car because I got to get there by X amount of time.
It's like mixed signals for your body, even if you weren't, even if it wasn't coming from the inside out. It's coming from the outside in.
And it's like this whole standard that we have in corporate America too, of the 9 to 5 or even the 8 to 6 or the 8 to 7, where it's like you're there all day. But the only way you can get there is if you have a car, from your point of wake up, eye open in the morning to okay. I gotta stumble, get my stuff, maybe make breakfast, get to the car, and then like my car is gonna bring me to my place of work, and I'll be there all day, do whatever I gotta do, and come back. And I try to see it just as a system because it's a system, right? And then you rinse and repeat that, for some people do it for 20, 30 years, but if you just like, it's a weird thing to really break down and see what am I actually doing? Like, am I creating a lifestyle of rush? Because now everything's a rush because now I got to do this. Like, I think a lot of people do this and then they create an unsustainable pace for their life. And then that causes suffering and causes issues, So it's like to be able to know what your pace is, like to set your pace and then keep it. And then like...
It's a slower pace around here.
Yeah, it is. It
so
totally
there's something
is.
to that.
Yeah.
If you are super fast paced and you live in New York City, you're going to feel normal.
Yeah.
And then people from New York City come out here and feel like we do nothing all the time.
Yeah, wow.
Like they hear that my day involved 2 hours of intentional nothing or 2.5 hours of intentional nothing.
Yeah.
That's exhausting.
Yeah, and that's why the standards in the city are so high too. Like rent is very high and bills and stuff that they have to pay there. So they have created like such a culture of productivity, whereas a place out here is more about
I don't think it's more productive though.
It is, it's not.
I've never heard a good argument for it's more productive.
But in the sense of they try to extract as much time out of people as they can, or like, whereas here, you relax, you look at the mountain. The mountains are timeless too. Like they're going to be here longer than we're going to be here.
When they're crushing.
Yeah.
Like the magnitude of wilderness, even just being able to see it, even if you're not really thinking about it.
Yeah.
It does kind of check your sense of self-importance.
Yeah.
You're not going to work 100 hours a week if you're in a beautiful spot as easily as you would if you're in downtown Chicago, because like there's nothing to see.
And that's another one to break down. We got home, work, and like what is work? Work is, true work is like effort, maybe like running or like lifting. Or
I think a good work one would be like a masculine feminine chat.
Sweet.
Which has been on our short list for a while.
Yeah. And let's dive deep on that because there's a lot of implications with that and
to
apply it on a personal level too.
Yeah, keeping it in the home lane here, this idea of territory came back around for me going through the War of Art, not to be confused with the Art of War.
Yeah.
And he used the same word. I'm like, what are the odds that like Ted would have used this word? I wonder if he was informed by the same muse, if not the same predecessor by both of these dudes. And this idea that you can act territorially or you can act hierarchically.
Yeah.
And so you can try to put people down to assert yourself up. You can try to get on people's level. You can think in terms of your direct comparison to other people. And that's most of what the world runs on. And then you have artists, which is why I think you have this trope of the starving artist, or this idea of this archetype of the starving artist as someone who is not interested in all that. And this idea of territory to me is this supreme act of love of I want to be this place. And one of the things that really struck something for me as an endurance athlete, outdoor athlete, is a territory doesn't take and it doesn't give, it just gives back. Now it always gives back, it doesn't take, but it does not give. So you can't take from a territory. That's not a thing. You have to give and it will give you back. And so that's a point of that's a thing to grapple with as you're out there establishing yourself in your physical realm of like going up a mountain every single damn day of like, what am I getting back? Because it's like a thermodynamics thing. We're neither creating or destroying here. I am giving a lot. I can feel it. It's real. Every major religion says that you're suffering and that your pain and your discomfort is real. That's pretty much at the base of most things that I'm aware of. Yeah. And this idea that you're giving so much, and so you're receiving back somewhere, and that's a fascinating idea. And sometimes I wonder if this isn't a lot more real and a lot less esoteric than we think it is. Because even when you are coming down 171, which is like my favorite gravel road in the world, it is my favorite gravel road in the world, and a Forest Service truck whips by, knocks up all this dust, and you are inoculating your nasal passages where you're making most of your nitric oxide with these ammonia oxidizing bacteria that are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to make nitric oxide. And your skin and your armpits and your scalp and your sinuses and your lungs and and you are slowly going to make more or less nitric oxide or more or less serotonin or more or less all of these different things as you bathe in that every single day. If you're not sterilizing yourself, which is a powerful word as I even say it, it feels dirty. And as you what's the word? Genocide. Like as you what's the active for that? But as you commit genocide on the bacteria on your skin microbiome, you are stripping part of what that home just offered you, part of what that territory just gave you back. Yeah. And you are also you're leaning away. You're not like the Gottman Institute for relationships, right? That leaning in. It's like you should lean into your territory. You should not be caught leaning out ever.
Yeah, that's true. I think there is a tug too that's almost like a physical thing where it can feel like you're leaning in, because it's like I feel like it's an invitation of life. Like lean into it, like don't shy away from it. Don't retreat. Like there's something for you in the present moment, right? And it's like I feel like that when I meditate sometimes, like it's almost like this pull, like going forward. And it's like I can feel that. Lean into it, grasp it, like be present, witness it, feel it,
And you change. I mean, you drink the water and eat the food and hug the people, and it's like your body, your physical vessel is being drastically changed. Even in the sense that you are more bacteria than you are you, like by cell content. So if you're shifting that bacteria through thin air and uphill running, that has now changed you